Hello and welcome to another edition of RHOX Garage. I'm your host Kevin. On today's episode, we're going to show you how to install a roof rack, part number ACC-RR03, on this 2010 Club Car Precedent. Now before we get started, let's take a closer look at the parts you'll receive with your roof rack kit, as well as the tools required to perform today's installation. Now let's take a look at the parts you'll receive with your roof rack kit. You'll receive your mounting brackets that are cart specific, in this case for the Club Car Precedent, as well as the hardware that will be included with the mounting brackets. Now this set of hardware will be included in the box with the roof rack itself, and on this particular installation we'll only be using these 4 rubber washers. Now the last part you'll receive with your ACC-RR03 is the actual roof rack itself. Now that we've examined all of the parts you'll receive with your roof rack kit, we're ready to take a closer look at the tools we'll be using to perform today's installation. Now here's a closer look at the tools we'll be using to perform today's installation. We have some painter's tape as well as a Sharpie. We have 2 10mm ratcheting wrenches. I recommend you use at least 1 ratcheting wrench, but 2 if possible, and you'll see why in just a little bit. A 13mm open-ended wrench, a 5/16 drill bit, as well as a smaller drill bit. Does not really matter the size, as we'll only be using it to create a pilot hole. And then a cordless drill with a T30 Torx bit. Now that we've gone over the tools we'll be using, we're ready to move on to the installation itself. So now the first thing we need to do is get our front mounting brackets installed. Now in order to do this, we're going to have to remove the rearmost nut and bolt from the front strut. Now to do this, this is where our 2 ratcheting 10mm wrenches come into play. And the reason I suggest having 2 is it's going to make it a lot easier because you can't actually fit a ratchet in between this area because of how tight it is. Once you have your factory hardware removed, we can go ahead and discard it, as we will not be reusing it. The next thing we need to do is take the hardware that comes with our mounting brackets and place one of the bolts through the front strut from the inside. Now when you open your hardware pack, you're going to notice you have 3 different size bolts. You'll have 4 bolts that are exactly the same size that are all smaller than the rest. Those are going to be used to mount your roof rack to the mounting brackets. You'll also have 2 bolts that are the same size that are a little larger than the 4 smallers. Those are going to be used to mount your front mounting brackets, and then you'll have 2 much longer bolts that will be used to put your rear brackets on the cart. Now what you're going to do is taking the flat washer, slide your bolt through, and then grab your mounting bracket, and you'll see how it's angled. You're just going to slide it up and in, like so. Let it sit loose, and then put your other flat washer and your lock nut on the outside. And then once you have your nut started, you can go back with your 2 10mm wrenches and tighten it down. Now that you have this front mounting bracket tightened down, you can move over to the other side of the cart and do the same process for the other front mounting bracket. With both of our front mounting brackets installed and the hardware tightened down, we can now move on to the rear mounting brackets. The next thing we're going to do is install our rear mounting brackets. Now in order to do this, we're going to have to remove the nut and bolt from the rear strut. Now to do that, we're going to use our cordless drill with the T30 Torx bit and a 13mm open-ended wrench. Now just like our front mounting bracket install, once we remove our factory hardware, you can go ahead and discard it, as you won't be reusing it during the installation. So to install our rear mounting bracket, we're going to take the larger of the 2 brackets that are included with the kit, those are your rear brackets, and the longest of the bolts that are included in the hardware pack. You're going to take a flat washer, put it on your bolt, place it through your mounting bracket, and then through the rear strut, just like the factory bolt went through. And then place your flat washer and lock nut on the other side. Now once you have your hardware in place, we're going to tighten it down utilizing the same 2 10mm open-ended wrenches that we used for the front mounting brackets. Now that we have the hardware tight on our rear mounting bracket on this side, we can head over to the opposite side and repeat the same process for the other rear mounting bracket. Now that we've got all 4 of our mounting brackets installed with all of the corresponding hardware tight, we can now move on to the next step, which is getting our roof rack prepped and ready for installation. Now in order to properly install our roof rack, you're going to have to drill 4 holes into the rack itself to get them mounted onto the brackets. Now we've already gone ahead and drilled 3 holes on our roof rack just to speed the process up a bit. We left 1 hole undrilled so that we can show you the proper way to drill your hole as well as mark and line everything up. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is take your roof rack and place it up onto your brackets. Once you have your roof rack up and on your mounting brackets, what I suggest doing is marking and drilling out your front 2 holes first. This way, when you go to place your roof rack back on, you can put your bolts through the rack and the front mounting brackets, and that'll help you square up the rear so that you can mark and drill out the rear holes. Now, when it comes to placing the rack on, there are no exact measurements as far as where to put it, so you just kind of have to line it up using your best judgment and any measurements that you may want to take. Now, since we've already drilled out the front 2 holes, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to place the bolts in and then line up for the last hole on the rear that we have to mark and drill. Now we have our bolts put through the front of our roof rack, and again, the reason for doing this is when marking your rear holes, it'll prevent the roof rack from wanting to slide off the mounting bracket, thus making it easier to mark your mounting holes. Now like I mentioned earlier, I want to go ahead and show you how exactly I marked my front holes, because you notice that if you try to put any sort of Sharpie or center punch or marking tool underneath of here, you don't have a whole lot of room, and again, when trying to do that, the rack may want to slide off the mounting bracket, which would then shift where you marked your holes and could create a whole bunch of chaos. So what I do is I go ahead and I set the bracket up here without any bolts in it, obviously, and once you kind of have it resting where you want it, just take some masking tape or painter's tape and you just set it right where your mounting bracket is on your roof rack. And then what you do is just with your eye, see about where your hole is going to be. And we're just going to draw a line into our painter's tape. And then this will continue once we take the rack off and place it up on the bench, which I'll show you in just a couple minutes. So in order to do our rear mounting hole mark, similar to the front, what we're going to do is we're going to take our painter's tape, and instead of placing it along the side of the roof rack, we're actually going to lift the rack up and wrap it around underneath of the roof rack itself. And then just set it back down. Now on the back you have a little bit more room between the roof and the bracket, so you can actually take your Sharpie, place it underneath, and just mark a little hole on your painter's tape. That way when you take it off, your hole will be there and ready for you to drill through. Now that you've done this, we're going to go ahead and take our roof rack off and show you how to mark the front hole all the way through, and then how to drill your rear hole, and then we'll be ready to put the roof rack back on and get it mounted and ready to go. Now we have our roof rack removed and up on our bench here, and just to finish off marking out your front mounting hole, as you see we have the tape that we placed up there with the line that goes around the bend. Now what I did was take another piece of painter's tape and place it in the same area, overlapping the original piece you put on there already. Take your Sharpie and just follow that line down that you made already. And then from there, you just drill your hole right in the center like we've already done. And that's how you can mark and drill out your front 2 mounting holes. Now on the rear, as you can see, because we wrapped the tape around and marked underneath, we already have our mark for where we need to drill our hole. Now we're just going to take our smaller drill bit, again, any size will do, just smaller than our 5/16 so we can get a good pilot hole, and we're just going to drill right through. And once you have your pilot hole drilled, just switch to your 5/16 drill bit and repeat that process. So after you have all 4 of your holes drilled, you want to go ahead and remove all the painter's tape that you applied, and then from there, you're going to take your roof rack and place it up on your mounting brackets. Now we're going to use the 4 smaller bolts as well as flat washers and lock nuts that were included with your hardware pack with your mounting brackets, as well as the 4 rubber washers that come with the roof rack itself. Now I recommend, again, placing your bolts through the front holes first and getting them lined up, and that'll help square up everything on the rear. Now as far as the rubber washers are concerned, you want to make sure you place them in between your roof rack and the mounting bracket itself. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get our roof rack up and installed on our cart. Now that we have our roof rack up on our mounting brackets, we can go ahead and install all of our hardware. And once you have all of your hardware hand tight, you can go back and secure everything in place using our two 10mm open-ended wrenches. Now before we can say our installation is complete, we want to go back and verify that we have properly tightened all of our hardware. Now to do this, we just want to go ahead and grab a hold of our roof rack and just kind of rock it back and forth just to make sure that none of our brackets or the roof rack itself slide or reposition themselves in any way. Once you're satisfied with how tight everything is, that will complete the installation of our roof rack, part number ACC-RR03 on this 2010 Club Car Precedent. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.